There's so many people who are going along a path in life and then they meet one wrong person and they pull out the drugs and then they're gone.
All right. Welcome back to the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am your host, Lutch, and today we are going to be talking about Put This in Your Classroom by Rachel Landis. As we can see by the cover, it is something that is pretty simplistic. It says Series 1 MH Solutions. Definitely going to have to ask about what that means. And I'm noticing they spelled her name wrong because at least on the front of the book, it says Rachel Lanfes, Lanfes. And then on the back of the book, it says Rachel Landis, Landes. So I guess that'll be my first question. But with that out of the way, again, very simplistic a cover that doesn't really give too much on, this could be about anything, relationships, teaching styles. I have no idea. So with that, let's dive right into the back of the book. Join a 20+ chapter adventure of different strategies for mental health fitness. With so many chapters, there is sure to be one that works for you. Any of the strategies will lead to improvements in mental fitness. No treatments, cures, or preventions that are FDA approved are included. This is a supplementary treatment, and in any event, follow the advice of your doctor and health professional. So most of that was one sentence saying there was 20, saying how many chapters there are. The next sentence says there's sure to be one to work for you, and then any of the strategies will help to lead to improvements in mental fitness. The next two sentences, so that's almost half of the back of the book is telling you that this is not medical advice. This isn't to be taken over a doctor. So again, we are left not really having a clue what it is that we're about to read. So I understand that's about mental health and mental fitness, but that could mean a million different things. And then whatever it means to me, whatever I'm seeking out, again, I'm when we're doing these segments, the mindset that I put myself in is, okay, I'm looking for this type of book. And I found that there's this among a bunch of others. How do I pick amongst those books which one I'm going to read? And so if I'm looking for some type of help with, with self-help, or getting my shit together and all that stuff, I don't know that there's anything here specifically with the name Put This in Your Classroom. When I'm not in school, I probably wouldn't even pick that up to read the back of the book. And then when I did, I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't have picked this up because it doesn't really tell me anything. Even thinking back to IDRYB 02 with Woo Woo for Women in Business, that book wasn't necessarily about anything in particular. It was about, taking, the things in your life and how to build upon them. But still, there was some type of language to lead you into, okay, I'm on the right track. And I didn't find this with this. So, as usual, I'm stuck diving into a conversation where I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm sure Rachel will be happy to tell us. So let's bring her in. All right, and welcome, Rachel. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So the first thing I got to ask you, is it Rachel Lanfes or Rachel Landis? Because I'm sure you know that on the front of your book, your name is spelled Lanfes, and on the back, it's spelled Landes. Were you even aware of this?
I did know that. I'll probably have to change that.
So it is Landis, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, and I did pass English class in high school for the record. So yeah,
we'll blame that on the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, speaking of the back of the book, quite a common theme so far from this show has been just how poignant the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" has really become. You know, we intentionally put a lot of time and thought into, you know, what the cover of the book looks like, and the synopsis on the back of the book is oftentimes the only selling point, or those two are the only selling points that you have in a sea of what must be billions of other books. I don't know, but I'm guessing that there's more, at least 100 million books that are currently available for purchase. And so you talk about mental fitness, but what exactly, where does the classroom aspect of it play into this?
I was on a walk with a friend once in Northern California, and she was working for Tesla at the time. And she just said, I think, I don't know if it was her idea or my, it was something like, do you know, like when you're talking to someone and you like come up with ideas and you're not sure whose idea it was.
Mhm.
And I kind of told her about this book series that I always wanted to write, and she encouraged me to do it. And I always said, no one's going to want to read this because I've always been into writing novels. So I thought that it was too much of a too far for me to start writing this. And she was like, you should really do it. Like, I want to see it happen. And I felt encouraged to write it.
And so is it like is it for students? Is it for younger kids? Like what's the, because the, you know, just I'm definitely interested in a lot of that mental fitness and mental health and stuff, but just being named, you know, seeing classroom in the name, I'm not a teacher nor a student, so that automatically says, oh, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, so I felt that through my life experience, I got out of school and was taught loads, but nobody taught me how to do my tax returns. No one taught me how to apply for a rental property. No one taught me how to buy property. No one taught me how to plan my day, how to manage my time. Like, I felt like I came out with so many skills, but it was also like really lacking so much. So I actually want to do like a whole bunch of stuff, like different topics. So put this in your classroom is kind of the overall idea, and then each one is different. And then one of the first things I noticed was that the education system has not been teaching mental fitness. So that's what the first one was about.
And so this is the first in a series of how many?
I have no idea.
Well, how many have you done so far?
Oh, one. I've done one so far. Well, I
Oh, okay.
did,
So,
yeah, one, yeah.
and so you just plan on, so again, I'm just trying to get an idea. So when you say put this in your classroom, is it more of like your classroom being your life, and turn your life into a classroom? Is that kind of the vibe?
It's definitely also just like a blatant request to the education system to just put this in your classroom, get this in the classroom, have students read this. Don't let them be launched into life. Just like, there are so many people I have seen just get swept away. One of the really obvious ones that comes to mind is drugs and alcohol. And I just feel like if people would tell them, hey, when you're hanging out with someone and this happens, try leave, try do this, try, you know, all these coping mechanisms. But instead, there's so many people who are going along a path in life, and then they meet one wrong person and they pull out the drugs and then they're gone. And I think it's
That
terrible.
was me. Yep. Thankfully not anymore, but yeah, I definitely had a long sordid battle with that. And I mean, personally, I've talked about this before, but personally, I think one of my saving graces was actually being aware of the beast that I was encountering, and all of that. And we can get into that. But so I guess then put this in your classroom is an exclamation that, like, this is what needs to be taught in school, as opposed to, you know, the stuff that, you know, we don't want to say useless, but there was such a trope when we were younger to ask, and maybe, you know, the class clowns would do it out loud and be like, why do I need to learn this? When am I ever going to use this? And they were kind of right in a lot of respects. Now, I definitely understand why, especially in like elementary school, you would want to have a wide array of things to expose kids to. And then further on in high school, you want to have a different set of an array of things, so that, you know, going off into the world or into college or whatever it may be, that again, the kids are exposed. But I think you're absolutely right about, you know, just in the time that I was in school. I remember that when I was a freshman, I graduated high school in 2008. So I remember as a freshman, there was, well, I remember in middle school we had wood shop. There was none of that in high school. And then when I got to high school, I remember my freshman year, you know, all the older kids would be like, "Oh, I love home ec. It's such an easy course." But you would actually learn real life skills. But because it, I guess, didn't jive with, you know, getting test scores and stuff like that, by the time I was even old enough, it might have been the next year or even the next semester. By the time I was ready to be like, "All right, my turn, nice blow off class," which I didn't actually know would probably be one of the most useful ones, they got rid of it. And so maybe you have some insight. Why do you think that there is such a focus on the things that they do, and a lack of focus on the things that are in your book?
Uh, I think it's one, it's just it's been built in a certain way. And they took, like, when people build a company, they usually have like an ethos, like something that, and that's kind of like the DNA that's at every point in the company. It goes all the way from like A to Z, and you'll see it everywhere in the company. So let's say a company is all about uh whatever it is that they say they're about, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in the way they set up the store, and so on and so on. And I think it started so long ago that it's built for an age that no longer exists. But also, I think there's another aspect where why it hasn't changed. The reason why I think it hasn't changed is I think it hasn't changed because there's a lot of resistance to really helping people to become knowledgeable and smart and empowered. Because I think if you have a whole society full of people who are really informed and very mentally sharp and have a high mental fitness and all of these different skills, who's going to buy the drugs? Who's going to watch the TV all the time? I mean, book sales would go up, but apart from that, a lot of industries would really fall apart. Like if you made women just fully secure, it would devastate the makeup industry.
That's a good point. So you think it's a very so how high do you think this goes as a conscious thing, that, well, we need to create consumers and we need to make sure the society runs the way we want, and we don't want to just help people and learn and have them succeed, because then they can, you know, they're not as easy to control.
I think I'm not really sure. I think there's definitely, in my opinion, I think a lot of it is conscious and people are actually trying to do what I'm saying. But I also think there's this manner that I think in general, just children and teenagers, the way they're dealt with, the way they're spoken to, the way teachers behave towards students, a lot of it is very out of line. And I don't really know if this really answers your question, but I think a lot of people get out of school and not only do they not have the skills, they're quite mentally bruised or quite emotionally bruised. So there's no, so I think it's like a lack of I don't know where I heard this, but it was like a saying, like, you can judge a society by how they treat people who are like vulnerable and in a state where like they need protecting. So I think it's just a reflection of a society that needs a lot more work, that we're not really truly looking out for like teenagers and kids who are the people that need some of the most vulnerable groups in society.
So maybe that it's not so much a nefarious thing where it's like we got to keep these people down, but maybe just a relic of, hey, well, this seems to be the way things work, and maybe people not looking into things like your book to see what can be changed and what because I think there is a lot of people in the industry, in teaching, in schooling, in education, who would be maybe almost offended at what you're saying. That, hey, well, we're not here indoctrinating children to just become mindless consumers. What are you talking about? What would you say to the average college professor teaching sociology who hears this and that's what they have to say to you? They
I
haven't read the
think
book, but they're like,
I
what is this
think
lady talking about?
maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Who knows? But uh, I think there's this idea like people optimize for usually one thing. So people have like a largest focus in their day or life theme, like during the theme of their life, what their most important thing is. And I believe people can do many things with their time. But if you ask someone, what is your number one thing, they probably will tell you it's one thing. And when you look at the way people prioritize their time, it's also something like that. So I think a lot of it is just what are they optimizing for? What, like when you go to these schools, are they optimizing to keep their job? Are they optimizing to be a really great teacher? Are they optimizing for, well, I'm just going to keep this job forever because I'm a professor, so who cares if I'm late? Like I don't know what they're optimizing for. It's really an individual thing.
So maybe it's the specific incentives at each level for not just the kids, not just for the teachers, but the people who are administrators and the people who are deciding what information gets distilled. That they're just too comfortable, and or maybe they just have the wrong incentives, and that if they were better incentivized to do the actual to actually benefit students in the way that would be most beneficial, that maybe that as it stands now wouldn't necessarily be best for them individually with their job. Like, say you have a tutoring business. If everybody's getting straight A's, then you're out of business. And so maybe it's not necessarily, and so I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to circle, is because if you have a tutoring business, likely your goal isn't to perpetuate some system that keeps everybody down and all this stuff. Your intention is to help individuals with their homework, but by being in that position and contributing to it, you're allowing this pattern to continue. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
And so is that, do you address that in your book, or are you more just offering alternatives?
I'm offering supplements to what I feel wasn't there. Yes.
So, like, what would be the number one thing that you could list from that supplements a typical public school education through high school, that even somebody who was an honor roll straight A student, but because of the education system, what's the number one thing that they could gain from your book?
Probably altering beliefs, because I think uh that was one of the first things I felt was missing. Was I had like all these like views of myself that were really inaccurate, and I had to learn how to undo that like mental programming that was leading me to a really bad place, because I came out of I came out of school with these like negative beliefs about myself, and that really had to change if I wanted to do anything.
And again, that's definitely something I think that as a society, at least in Western society, we're starting to focus on mental health and mental fitness more. But certainly within the school system. I mean, even as somebody, you know, because I have a degree in psychology, I wanted to be a therapist. That was the plan. And from seventh or eighth grade, as early as I could, I was taking human behavior courses. I was taking, and then I finished that, and I started the high school courses while I was still in middle school, and then I was doing AP courses in high school, and I got the degree, and then I realized I don't really want to be a therapist. But point being is that while there were courses available to me, I had to specifically seek those out. They were electives. They were not, and again, like I said, they were higher level courses. So, you know, I happened to be interested in that and happened to know that's where I wanted to take my life. But in general, I wasn't a good student. So if I didn't know that, I never would have decided to just take a harder course. And who knows, maybe that in and of itself is a symptom of not wanting to learn, because I don't see the value in what I'm learning, versus when I saw, oh, human behavior, I want to be a psychologist. Yeah, I'll do that. And how do you think we can take stuff like that and integrate it into what we're already doing? I mean, obviously, it would be great to give the entire education system an overhaul in many different ways that it needs it, but it's unlikely that we're going to see a complete overhaul. So how would you want to see your ideas implemented into a more regular curriculum?
I would like to see find your purpose work and like future planning work. So I'd like to see people sitting students down and saying, what is it you want to achieve in your life? And then how can we make this relevant to you? Because if I'm sitting in math class and I don't care for math, but I want to study something that involves math, maybe I'll actually pay attention. And then just in general, just teaching how to break goals down into components so it can be achieved, whatever the goal is.
And that's something that you don't think that they're doing well enough at every level, or is it something that you think needs to be just implemented earlier?
I think it needs to be implemented as early as possible because it's what gives people the courage and the discipline to say no. Like I said with the story about the drugs, if somebody was told was work doing like find your purpose work from like really young ages, and then they were in these kind of situations, they would be like, oh wait, my purpose is XYZ. Okay, I can't be here. I have to go. So that would help. I think it's supportive. I think in general, what I'm saying, I know these are very specific things, but in general, I think it definitely is a little bit more of psychological support, because there's so much work on intelligence, but there's much less work on emotions.
Definitely. And I think, I think coming from the devil's advocate position as like an administrator who's like, okay, we only have so much time. We can only teach so much stuff. What do we get rid of that or how do we, if we're not getting rid of something for this, how do we take what we already have and add this in? We have a very full curriculum of things that, and psychology and each person's psychology is so individual that it's that type of thing isn't really something that can be effectively taught on such a wide scale at all. And then when you're bringing it down, especially, if you're talking even late elementary school, middle school kids, it's hard for them to see far enough in, to see the scope of why stuff like this is important. Again, going back to why do I need to learn this? What am I going to use this for? Well, obviously the goal would be to explain it in a way where they don't ask that question, but getting there is what I feel like even now with an academic interest as well as a personal interest beyond that, it doesn't seem to, unless somebody is specifically suffering with a mental health issue, it doesn't seem to be of concern. It doesn't seem to be something that people want to talk about and get into. And it's like, oh, this is this is depressing or whatever. And that seems to be a very no matter the age, a very common way to approach this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just much more, in my opinion, preventative measures. So I think I've seen so many cases of people who they have something going on and the home isn't that great and the school isn't that great. And where are they getting it out? Like all that stuff that builds. And I think you're right. I think it's often not even helpful to just sit there and go to the really dark places in the mind, because sometimes people get stuck there. So if there's just a way to kind of express it, like I'm a big fan of like painting for like painting therapy, whatever, there's an actual name for it. So I think if there was more of like a space for that, and like more just a little bit of time, like once a month, the end of the month, a day where they just kind of focus on self-development and just viewing the students as like actual humans, you know, because I feel like sometimes they're just like, I don't know, just carted around.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand how that is the case. Again, though, even thinking from having immigrant parents who are definitely focused on success, and not nearly as bad as the stereotypical you got to do 80 hours of studying every day, but even as early as middle school, when and I mean I happened to be a rather intelligent person who was able to get through high school basically without studying for anything. And I didn't do very well, but I just picked things as long as I would somewhat pay attention in class, I would pretty much get it. But still every day from like 7th or 8th grade, mom was like, okay, you got to go and spend an hour and review what you did for the day. And so these were the days when I had my my PSP, my little handheld PlayStation thing, and I would just be in my room, and the door would be over here, and I'd be facing this way, and I'd have my thing right under the desk, and my books right here. And she walked by, I'm studying, and then so she goes right back to Madden 06. That was my I got really good at Madden through middle school, and for point being, my parents weren't that crazy, but I'm thinking of other parents who are again going to hear this and be like, I don't want my kids spending time on this frou-frou stuff. There's a lot that they need to learn. I want them to go to Stanford or some Ivy League school, and I want them to be focusing on STEM subjects and this and that and that and that. What do you?
Sorry. I'm sorry, my alarm went off. No, I'm sorry. It was for this. That's why I had an alarm.
Not a problem.
And I don't know why. Oh, because it was a different time. Okay, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, we started.
I'm so sorry.
Not a problem. I'm happy to leave that in, but we could cut that out if you like. Yeah. So I mean, basically, just these parents who, especially especially parents who come here with a very different view of education and just childhood in general than the typical Western view. Again, this is something that I think they would be like, I don't want my child, wasting their time on this. And I want them, studying the stuff that matters. I need them to be working on the next step, and they can figure that stuff out, when they get older.
Yeah. I mean, I see how that happens. I think a lot of I don't know how you would really phrase it, but I think a lot of people when they're growing up and they're a little person, their parents are really projecting a lot on them. And I think it would be easier if the parents realized earlier on sometimes that they should rather try to build whoever it is that this person is becoming, rather than just kind of try to squash them into this like vision they have for them that is sometimes just so off base. Like if you had no interest in doing those studies, like the truth was that maybe you just wouldn't do the homework as much as maybe it was a great idea. If you had no interest in it, you just might not do the work. So why it's like where did it like I guess what I'd rather say, like the way like children used to like work like in the past, like they used to like work in like coal mines and stuff. it I think there needs to be more of like a respect that's kind of like put through like all the way from the teachers to people growing up. And I think for a lot of people growing up is a really scary time. It's being miniature in a big world and you can't reach the door and there's no one standing up for you. And and it's like if something happens between someone and their parent or parents, who are they gonna go, who can they talk to? It's a very lonely, difficult time, I think. And I remember growing up and hearing, oh, this is the best time of your life, and I was like, this better not be the highlight of my life because this is horrendous, this is
Yeah.
really bad. And I think it is really bad for a lot of people. And I just wish that parents were like more aware that they're dealing with someone who's one day going to become a certain person and no one knows yet what that is. And let's try discover that. Let's try figure out who, like maybe growing up this person doesn't want to do XYZ but they're fascinated by something else. Well, maybe that's a clue. And I think so many times the teachers and the system that's trying to shape children into adults have their own idea and they're pushing so hard on that idea that they don't take a moment to be like, why are we teaching this kid math in high school? This one is like obsessed with drawing. All they do all day is draw. Why don't we just send them to a class where they learn how to draw? It's obvious, but there's no space for that, really.
I mean, there's definitely spaces. There's art schools, and
Yes.
there's you know, but again, you know, if you are, you know, again, just taking the devil's advocate position, because I don't have any kids, and I would have loved to, you know, as a musician, and I you know, like talking and creating stuff like this. I would have loved to been able to do more of this in high school. And now instead of having to just use YouTube to kind of learn it on my own, if I had somebody that would, you know, I mean, not that I didn't take a video editing class in high school, but that's besides the point. The point is, if I understood that this was, and not this specifically because, you know, YouTube wasn't always a career, but just creation and art and that kind of stuff was more of a viable path, and then I might have gone down that road. However, there is definitely something to be said that if you dedicate your life to learning how to paint, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to become a successful painter. Whereas if you study math and finance and business, then you don't really have to become, you don't really have to be a savant. You don't really have to be anyone quote unquote special in order to survive. And I think a lot of the just a lot of the mentality that comes from parents who aren't so interested in what the kids are interested in is the financial security that would allow that person to enjoy painting in their free time while they have their boring job that they may not love, but their house is paid for, their kids are fed, and they have an extra room in their house where they can afford an easel and a canvas, and they have the time on the weekends and they can paint and they can do that. And if they want to sell their paintings and make money and on the side, that's great. And then if you become a famous painter, then you can quit your job. But if you never learned how to, you know, do, you know, insert boring job here, then there's no, that's a big bet, especially the younger you go, to say, okay, we're gonna bet that this kid at 7 years old, at 10 years old, at 15 years old is not only going to continue being interested in painting, but continue interested in painting once it becomes a primary source of income. and that they are even good enough to make it a living.
Yeah.
That's a very, I mean, I would think that, that's a very real concern for parents. Again, I'm not one, but that seems to be a very rational risk assessment from a parent's perspective. It's like, yes, I understand that you love painting. Maybe we can take you to a painting class, and do that as an extracurricular. But in terms of focusing, especially early education, on what you want as a child, what you want doesn't necessarily, translate to anything that is worthwhile in that context. So
Yeah.
how do we make those distinctions, and how do we then have the infrastructure to take the individuality of each child and guide them in that direction? I don't know that we have the resources to just the people to even identify that in different children, especially in lower income areas where there's bigger classrooms and other things to worry about, where there's violence and there's stuff to worry about. Spending money on security guards and metal detectors might very well be a lot more worthwhile than after school painting, or just hiring a teacher for a painting course.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I heard that argument. I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're right.
So don't buy the book. Screw that. You're wrong.
No, man, I think you're right. I'm so that was so convincing. I'm totally convinced.
So really, is it that simple? So are you gonna take your books off the shelves then?
I'm definitely going to redo the cover. But no, you're totally right, because like in some areas it's like, hey, we're trying to make sure this kid gets their one piece when she gets security guards. We're not going to be like
Right.
thinking about
And
this
that's
other stuff.
and that's not, I obviously I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiments of what you're writing about, and I wholeheartedly agree that there is a big piece missing from education, and if you're going to call it that, that it has to be holistic in at least some sense. You don't have to learn about everything, but you need to learn more than just the facts for rote memorization that they want you to learn. I definitely agree with that. And so then the problem is that that's been something that we've wanted, as a society, that we've wanted for a long time, and it comes down to the hard practicality of the fact that there's just a lot of fucking kids. There's a lot of people to deal with, and every one of them is different. And so if having a government regulated education system has to be something that encompasses all of those children. And when we're talking about private schools and extracurricular stuff, then I definitely think what you're saying has a place. And I think it has a place within public school education as well. I'm just concerned with how do we get from where we are to getting books like yours in the classroom, information like yours in the classroom.
Yeah, I think I spoke to some schools about doing like individual like contracts, and I would love to kind of like maybe make a second edition where I just make like get it like redesigned like really nicely, and it's like really clear and easy to read. But with Michael Phelps, when he was growing up, his coach got him to write down his goals, and on the back he wrote like, I want to win a gold medal, and then he like crossed it out because he was like embarrassed. And that, to me, he's like such a good, Bob Bowman, his coach, is such a good example of a teacher. And he was having him do these kind of worksheets. He was having him say, okay, what do you want, what is it you want to achieve? And he was having him do backward planning sheets, like, okay, well, if you want to win a gold medal, what do you have to do? And he was having him start to think like that. And I think it's good to start as soon as possible to get people's brains moving in the right direction.
So maybe maybe it's not necessarily about, again, this giant overhaul. maybe it's just about using the ideas that you talk about and adapting the information that we already want to give to the kids and framing it better and making it less about rote memorization and making it more about this critical thinking, so that even if we don't have the time and resources to have a find your purpose class, that this find your path ethos is something that is part of the American or the, you know, just in general the Western public school system, is that this stuff matters and this stuff needs to be, you know, we are at a detriment by not you know, injecting this into, you know, right alongside the science classes and math classes and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the mind is a massive topic. So it's like, why are we studying? It just needs just a little bit of an upgrade for the 21st century, because we're studying all these other topics, but psychology and the self is not a topic we're studying.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's not that, again, and you know, there, like I said, for me personally, it was as early as seventh grade that I was able, seventh or eighth grade, that I was able to start getting into these things, and I do think that that was a good time, because stuff like that can definitely get dark, and you need to be mature enough to, you know, like, just pulling an example off the top of my head, if you have a child who had an abusive childhood, then, you know, while they're going through that and while they're stuck in that situation without you know, specific you know, having a specific therapist and all that would obviously be super helpful, but the public school trying to take on that specific issue while they're trying to take on the specific issues of every other child, that I don't know that they could provide that for that child. But it sounds like there is space for when we're talking about other things, especially, you know, in like literature, reading, English. That's something that is I would say the least, you know, that's not in STEM, but it still has a very heavy it still carries a lot of weight in academia. It's not like people are saying that literature is a waste of time or that we shouldn't be reading the classics. And so, I mean, I don't know, maybe some are, but that's neither here nor there. And so maybe in classes like that, we could not have to get rid of anything in particular, but start adding this element of it's not just, you know, we're giving you information to spit back at us. We're giving you a method of thinking that you can apply not only to this but to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be good. I mean, it is cool to put this in your classroom. I do think it should be integrated into the schooling system. That is what I personally think. If it's in English class, that's great.
Cool. And so you said this was the first one of a series that you're looking to do.
Yes.
So what is what's, you know, in this book specifically that's different, that's going to be different from, you know, the other books and the message of the overarching series?
So this book is a bunch of chapters, and every chapter is, you can really read it alone. It goes just through different mental fitness strategies, just so people feel like they have a giant toolkit when they go through their day. And the other ones, let's say I have another one on a different topic, it would probably just be strategies on that topic. So I guess it's entirely different from the other books that I would create on this in this series, because this one is just like a bunch of topics on mental fitness, and like another one might be about nutrition. So it would just be lots of topics about nutrition. I guess the only real overlap between this one would probably be one about nutrition, because I do think I talk a little bit about food in this one, in this book.
And so you've got this mental fitness, you've got nutrition. What other kinds of things, again, what other kinds of things are we missing?
I definitely think drugs and alcohol is one. I think that would be amazing. I think uh so, like accounting. I don't really think
Hmm.
like, yeah, just like accounts,
Just like
like
basic home finance and stuff like that.
yeah, so many like simple rules. Like people told me later on, like what percentage of should be for rent. I was like, I've
Mhm.
never heard of this concept
Yeah.
before. Uh organization, organization, yeah. That like it depends. Some people just really like naturally have a strong inclination towards being
Hmm.
organized. And there's some people who struggle with it for a long time and they can never find their pants. They can never find their shoes.
I think that's a really good point, and maybe unfortunately another point against the idea that or just another point that makes this a little bit harder to implement is that a lot of these things are very fundamental, and it seems because they are so fundamental that maybe most, if not a lot of people tend to get it, and then those who don't will can kind of figure it out as their life goes on. That it seems like, okay, well, if 40% of the people already have good organizational skills, and just by having to be at class on time and finish their assignments, and half of the other 60%, or half of the 60% will learn through doing those things. And then 30%, what are we going to do? We can't teach them. We can't, be right on top of them. And then even of that last 30%, some get a little extra help from the guidance counselor. And so you really only end up with 10% of kids who are just not really getting their organizational issues addressed. But again, so it's like not everybody is going to need those classes, and the finance thing is definitely something more ubiquitous. But in terms of the drugs, in terms of the even nutrition and physical fitness, I think a lot of people, just by being in sports from when they're young and having people in their life who are into that, naturally see the importance. Unlike somebody like me, who I maybe stepped foot into a gym 10 times, and uh, you know it's the problem becomes, if it's not something that when it comes to algebra, none of the kids know algebra. So it makes sense to have somebody who can bring you from zero to learning algebra. Okay, I get this now. And the specific example with drugs is that we had the whole DARE system. I don't know if are you familiar with DARE? So DARE was I don't even remember what it stands for, but it was basically just the anti-drug uh, like public service announcement program. And they would come to they would like bring a cop to the school when in elementary school, and they'd have a suitcase full of drugs and like, this is the stuff you don't want, and they'd show you videos of this and that. But it was very overplayed, and it became a meme by the time people my age who saw that in elementary school all became potheads and drinking all the time. And it's like, oh yeah, I used to have a Dare shirt that I would just wear because I thought it was funny, because I'm a big pothead. So and it didn't work, and they shut down the program because it didn't work. um and I think a lot of it has to do with a couple of things. One, drugs are fun. If you tell people that they're not fun, and then they find out that drugs are fun, then they're going to discredit everything that you've said. So I mentioned how, like, when during my journey, we can call it, I was very aware of what I was doing, and I had gotten with a bunch of friends, gotten into doing pain pills and stuff, and the natural progression is to graduate to heroin. And I'm pretty much, I think I'm the only one of my friends who was in that group doing pills and stuff who actually didn't become a heroin addict, and I think it's because of that specific mindset that, like, hey, this isn't a game. You're dealing with serious business here. And then I got to a point in my life where I was like, okay, well, here we are. I'm at this crossroads. I'm either gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be a drug addict, or I got to change something. And luckily, I had the foresight and the will and the ability to go down the right road. But again, I feel like it's a lot easier said than done. Saying, oh, we need to help kids not try drugs. Well, I don't even know if that's necessarily, which drugs, at what, when, and how is it that we don't want kids to do drugs, or is that we want kids to be able to be in that situation and think critically and make decisions for themselves?
Yeah, I want to make sure that people have the stop and the start on their brain.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to be
And
clear, I'm not encouraging children to be smoking weed or doing drugs. I'm just saying it happens. So I'm not, and 21
yeah,
and over.
well, like if someone doesn't know how to like really build these decisions for themselves, let's say they were in that position and they had to make a choice, they can't even tell right from left. They don't even know, okay, here's right, here's left, this leads to this leads to that, this might be good in the short term, this might be good in the long term. So they don't even have the vocabulary to build those thought processes. And to me, that's not fair, and that's not called building a healthy human. If you're in a position and you choose whatever it is you choose, and you know what you're choosing, even awareness is like teaching to inform people, hey, this is so and so drug, because I think there's many situations where people aren't told. There's a massive I don't know how common it is, but spiking and further with pills, and teaching how when you buy like cannabis in Amsterdam, it's clean, I think. When you buy it on the street, how do you know they didn't sprinkle it with something? So I'm just saying in general, there's that. Even there's so much work to be done on these topics that I feel like it's so much easier to make the situation better. Like there's so much room to improve.
So let's dive into that specific example, because I'd like to nail down some type of specifics. I understand, obviously, I haven't read the book, but neither has anybody else who's watching. So this is this is exactly what it's there for. So with the example of drugs, saying that is a extremely prevalent thing, that drugs will be laced, and especially with powders. If you're doing cocaine, or if you're doing like Molly or ecstasy, heroin, those things are very easily stepped on, as we call it in the business. But you're the main guy will get like a brick of cocaine, and then he'll have a thing of baby laxative, and be like 2 parts cocaine, 1 part baby laxative. You mix it all up and you sell it as if it's cocaine. Same thing with and then you with heroin, the big thing was that it would be laced with fentanyl, and which is a drug that is one little speck. That's what George Floyd died of, a speedball of fentanyl, and I think it was meth. But it if he just had the meth, I'm sure he would have been fine. It was the fentanyl, but it's this super potent painkiller, and so for a long time it was it was being put in heroin. And the sad thing about heroin is that if you have a batch that kills somebody, then that says to the other addicts, oh, this stuff is strong, so let me get some of that, and just be a little extra careful. So but that is that was in the world of heroin, where you're already trying to kind of get there, and then just the fentanyl is just too much of that. Now there is increasing reports of fentanyl, again, which is a pain pill, a downer, and being laced into cocaine. And so I think the logic being that if you're speedballing these things, then you're going to need more of the cocaine, so you'll buy it. But because they're very different drugs, if you have a certain tolerance for even with this fentanyl being so potent, the tolerance for somebody who is a regular heroin user, their tolerance for the fentanyl is going to be a lot higher than somebody who doesn't mess with that at all, and they, just drink and do an 8 ball of coke with their friends on the weekends or whatever. And yeah, so the aspect of, you don't know what you're getting is very, again, it's very poignant. But for me, I was close friends with the people that would get things for me, and I would do I would do drugs with them, and they would get stuff and go and do the drugs with the people they're buying them from, and then bring them back. So by the time they come back, I already know that somebody that I trust very closely did these specific this batch with somebody who they trust, and everybody's fine. So, not that it's foolproof, but that's my thinking. And for better or worse, I'm still here, and again, I wasn't into I was into pills most of the time, where of course a professional pharmaceutically pressed pill isn't going to be cut like just some powder in a baggie. But the idea, the point being, how then do you take this this mentality that you need to think critically and you need to make good choices? It's in that context, it seemed like at the time that I was making good choices compared to other choices I could have been making. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't, if I was already not going to choose not to, that would obviously be the good choice. Don't do drugs. That would be the good choice. But I had already made the decision to do drugs. And so in using my critical thinking, I'm like, okay, if this guy first of all is always reliable, then this guy is an actual close friend who we just happen to do this stuff together, and he trusts him, and he went and so I'm thinking like, okay, I'm good, as good as you can be when you're dealing with this stuff. I've already decided to take that risk. And again, maybe that is just something that I developed as somebody who again, bringing it back to the fundamentals that some people do have and some people don't have. I'm the only one who didn't become that heroin addict. So maybe that was the fundamental thing that I do have that others don't. And there's other fundamentals that people have that I don't. But again, that's what makes it so hard, is how do we take something, just the one thing, just one aspect of taking drugs and thinking critically in that context. Just my own story is so unique that I don't know how I don't know what would you be looking to write? What type of message would you be looking to send to the first grade version, the fourth grade version of me, who is eventually going to be making these decisions and, not becoming a heroin addict, not ending up in rehab, not killing anybody, not doing any of those things, but spending wasting a lot of money and spending a lot of time not being a happy, productive person. I threw a lot at you, but the point being is that every single one of these things is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was that made you not actually go that path. I don't know if it was all the psychology that you were actually studying all the time. I don't actually know what was going on for you that made you think, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I think that's actually very interesting to hear from a person. To like, everyone's going one way, and all of a sudden you're like, no, thank you. I think one of the powerful things is, I guess, for me, meditation and like getting clean are so interrelated, and teaching people to be conscious and to like check in, because it sounds like you were going down a path, but there was a point where you were like, I don't like, this is my line. I don't go any further. I'm not going to, I mean, I don't know if I'm hearing you correctly, but that's how I'm interpreting it. So correct me if I'm wrong. But
No,
it's
yeah,
almost,
I mean, sorry to
yeah.
cut you off. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was, I mean, maybe let's just say over the course of like 2 or 3 months, I was like, this is getting bad. Like, and then I'd still go. And so after a little while of thinking that, I realized like, okay, this is a situation now. This isn't just a thing I'm doing and then then it's done. But yes, I had this realization again, that I was at a crossroads, that I'm now I'm not just doing a thing that's going to go away. I'm now in a habit, and I have to make the decision to either continue that habit or to end that habit. And I mean, that was a process in and of itself to end the habit. But it was a conscious decision, and you know, I think it's that realization that you're talking about, that yes, I don't know that most people are thinking that way. And it came from it actually came from the movie Saw. And have you seen it?
No.
The horror flick. There's a whole series where the guy, like, he's like, "Oh, do you want to play a game?" Like Jigsaw, that whole thing. And there is a no spoilers, don't worry, but there's a scene near the end of the first movie where there's two guys who are in one of the games, and the one guy is kind of trying to figure things out and talking about the Jigsaw character, and saying he's smart and this and that, and the other guy's like, "Oh, you sound like you're looking up to him." And the guy is like, "I'm a doctor. If you want to beat a virus, you have to understand its power." And that line, and I mean, I don't even remember if that's the exact line, but that sentiment stuck with me. And I mean, I saw this movie in high school ish, and then I didn't get into drugs for maybe another 5, 6, 7 years after that. But I always knew what drugs were. It's not like I didn't know what they were. And so when it came time to decide, am I really going to do this? I had to look at it and realize I'm not better than this. I'm not able to conquer this. I've got to work with this, and this is a dangerous thing. And it's something that you've got to learn to do in every aspect of your life. And maybe having this acute ability to assess risk didn't lead me down the perfect path. But when it comes to even simple things as like getting in the car, that's still a risk that you have to assess and decide that, okay, me getting to where I need to be on time and not out of breath because I walked 60 miles, that's worth getting in the car and potentially dying. That's something that happens to thousands of people every day. But I'm deciding that to take that risk.
Right. And it sounds like, to me, there was a lot of distinctions along the way in your behavior. So while they're all going, you're actually letting them test the batch for you. So that, I mean, to me, that sounds like a massive distinction. There's so many tiny decisions, as well as these like big decisions, like, am I going to major in this or that? There's also like little decisions where people can start to exert power. And it sounds like, in my opinion, it sounds like you were more conscious than most people during that kind of process, and you were like still making little distinctions and still trying to like generate that power, and eventually you were strong enough to like move away from it.
I would have to agree. And I mean, in most cases it was well, I mean, and it's hard to tell in hindsight, because in most cases it was just textbook rationalization. Like, I'll be fine. I'll be able to do this. It's not that big of a deal. But like the fact that I was right, does that still count as a rationalization? Do I get credit for that, or am I just lucky? I could just be lucky, because I think the tiny distinctions. That is something that I needed to explicitly learn. And again, it wasn't taught to me. It was something that came from the experiences of, one little move this way versus one little move that way. And just like you said, tiny little distinctions along the way, and always having, especially when you're doing something so risky, having risk assessment at the front of your mind. Driving around with drugs is something that's gotten me arrested twice. And yet I know people who have been addicts for so long who are super reckless, and they'll be smoking in the car and broken taillight, no problem, speeding. And meanwhile, if I was ever driving 30, then I'm like 10 and 2, following the speed limit, and it just so happened that I got caught up. But I would have to imagine that with my luck, if I was just as reckless as everybody else, that it probably would have been a lot worse.
That's so bad.
Yep. A lot of learning the hard way. A lot of learning the hard way.
Yeah.
So when you, it seems like a very big task to take, not take on the education system, but to look at the education system and want to implement such maybe not big changes, but have big effects. Then that's just a really big endeavor. And so is it accurate to say that you're closer to the beginning of the journey than the end?
Yes, definitely.
Because I was being facetious before. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying like, oh no, you were a bad guest. Get rid of your book. We're not reading this one. That's not at all what I meant by that. But I think it's important to realize that I appreciate that you are willing to say, that's a good point. I need to go back and think about that, because that seems to be a sentiment all in its own that maybe you can write a book about, of people just taking in new information, being like, I didn't think about it that way before. And because people tend to have their ideas and are so stuck to them that even if they encounter evidence that shows them that they're completely wrong, or that they just simply need to update their beliefs, that they take that personally. And again, as somebody who maybe I'm blessed with the fundamental understanding of that logical aspect, that if somebody is attacking my idea, that's not necessarily them attacking me. But that seems to be, again, something that not everybody gets. And you try to have conversations, especially in this day and age when everything's politicized and everything is so extremely black or white, then it prevents us from just talking about the things that need to be talked about and solving things that need to be solved. And so I definitely applaud you for what you're attempting to do. And I definitely I don't think you would disagree in saying you've got a lot of work ahead of you. But this is something very noble. And I think if you are successful in integrating this type of thinking into just our basic public school system, and this can be something, these fundamentals can be distributed to everyone when they're young, then that will have such a big impact on the distinctions and decisions that kids make as they're getting older and older and older. And it won't be until they have made a bunch of mistakes and then have to learn from those mistakes. Not that people are going to not make mistakes, but certain mistakes you don't have to make in order to learn from them. You don't have to spend 5 years as a drug addict paying for gas and food and coins in order to learn, okay, don't be a drug addict. I trust me, you just don't be a drug addict.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people have like keystone beliefs. So like if someone has a belief that is like really fundamental, anyway, if someone has a very core belief and it gets attacked, they're probably gonna reject it because it would make them have to reassess the whole persona, the whole personality. Everything has to be like reevaluated. And I think a lot of people are very fragile. So when someone says to them, oh, I think this could be changed, I think this could be updated, they're not really strong enough to really look at it.
Right.
So I mean, I just really empathize with that, because I think sometimes people look like they're doing really well, they look like they're really strong, but if you're saying you see a lot of that, and I don't know if that's what you said, it's just how I'm interpreting what you said, but
definitely.
people are saying like when they're told maybe this could be updated, they're like no, and they're quite close-minded. Maybe they're not as secure as they really appear.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating because you say you have a lot of empathy, and I don't, because and maybe I should have more, but I spend a lot of time thinking about the things that I think, and I have a lot of opinions, but they're not just opinions that come out of nowhere. And I can be somewhat open with my opinions, popular or unpopular, and a lot of them are unpopular because the popular opinion is one that isn't one that's well thought out. And so when I express my not so popular opinion, and somebody who has the popular opinion, who hasn't actually thought it through, wants to come and say, hey, this is wrong, this is the right opinion. And then I'm actually like, okay, well, I actually have heard of that thought before. And here's a detailed and logical layout of why I don't subscribe to this, and rather I subscribe to this idea. They take it as like even though I'm not like telling anybody they need to think it, they're the ones telling me I need to change. And when I'm like, actually, no, I like this because XYZ, they get mad. It's like a personal attack that I didn't take their opinion on. It's like, but yet I'm the bad guy. I'm the one who always has to be right. It's like, wait a minute, you're the one trying to convince me of something. I'm just saying what I think. And this gaslighting culture where it's like, if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong, is so, I hate the word, but it's so toxic. And a quote from my dad that I'll always remember, because of this specific, I don't have this empathy, and it does drive me insane when people, like, if you can't at least have the humility to accept that, okay, I've thought about this and I'm right. So even if you feel like you're right, don't get mad at me because I'm right. I didn't mean to offend you by being right. And so my dad would always say, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Is that right, Dad? I think that's right. And basically just means that, if you force your opinion on somebody, they're even if they say they agree with you, they're going to still hold the same opinion. And I think even further than that, it's become to the point where if you try to convince people out of their opinions, they dig their heels in even more. And I mean, maybe, I don't know how to address that. Maybe empathy is the way, but it drives me insane.
Yeah, it's like they're not really understand. A lot of people don't really get, like, everyone has their own inner world and their own way of seeing things, and it's not an attack on anyone else that someone views the world a certain way. But again, I think it's when someone is very insecure and they're just grasping onto beliefs and they're holding onto it like a blanket, when it's attacked, it's quite difficult for them. But if they're secure, if they're in a secure place in their life and you disagree, they don't mind. It's like, if you disagree with me about gravity, I don't care. It's not like, I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be like screaming like, you're wrong. Like, that's not the truth. But it's like
the ice wall, dude. There's no such thing as gravity. What are you, stupid? As the flat earthers would say. That was something new. I did not understand that the flat earthers don't believe in gravity. That's a whole
right.
But I mean, that's a good example where there was, for a while, when that was really taking the internet by storm. It's like people who like, even if the flat earth people were right, the way that they were going about what they were doing was like, you're not going to convince anybody this way. And I've seen that play out in so many different ways across so many different just cultural and political things. Just, whether it's a political opinion, or whether it's a movie that like everybody hated Captain Marvel, and everybody was saying, because, oh, it's sexist this and sexist that. But instead of being able to have a conversation about, okay, well, let's compare Captain Marvel to Captain America, and why are these two characters different, and what instead of having that conversation, it's like, oh, you're a sexist, and it's like, well, no, that's not what's happening here. And if that's the only way that you know how to interact and communicate and problem solve, especially with others, then what's happening in your own head when you have these things? So I mean, I guess I should have some more empathy for these people, but it's like, figure it out. But I guess that's what you're here for, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people haven't, because you would think, I get why you're saying, like, why would I have empathy? Because why haven't they figured out, why hasn't it been maybe they're having an insecure phase, but after a few months, they're like, you know what? I know what I think. You tell me what you think. But a lot of people, they seem to go a long time just having these beliefs that are very delicate when you actually try to attack them. They freak out when it's like, as I was saying, if I really believe in gravity, you could tell me, you could sit here for 6 hours telling me all about how gravity is not true. I'll be like I'll walk away. I'll still be like, oh yeah, gravity's true. I wouldn't care. Yeah.
Or maybe they have some fantastical scientific evidence, and you might walk away and be like, wow, all these years I thought gravity was real, but you've proven to me that gravity doesn't exist. I am you were talking about ethos before. I used to have a podcast before this that was just more conversational and just free form. Needless to say, nobody was listening to that. And the ethos of that was believe nothing except that anything is possible. I actually have it tattooed on me right here. Believe nothing except that anything is possible. And as a very staunch atheist who grew up Catholic, the ideas that I held when I was, the religious beliefs I held when I was young, I wholeheartedly believed them until I didn't. And so now, in hindsight, seeing how strong, and that's not the only thing, but that's just, the first major example, but seeing how I could have been so sure about something and now think that I'm so wrong about it, whether I was wrong then or I'm wrong now. The idea is to not dig your heels in too deeply on anything and always be open to new information. And like you're saying about gravity, if you address it that way, then there should be no reason to get offended. You either believe what you believe and you know what you know, and new information either does or doesn't change that, or it either does change it or it doesn't change it, and then that's it. And again, because I was this religious person, because I used to be, super, what's the word? Not, I don't know. I just like political. I would hold political opinions that I was like, how could you think any differently? Same thing as when I was religious. And some of those opinions have changed as I've gotten older and I've learned more. And, specifically with guns, I used to be very anti-gun. I grew up in a nice suburb, and, the only people who had guns were the people from the next town over who were in gangs and stuff. And so I didn't understand that there is a giant portion of the country who lives a different way than that. And that the response time for cops is 15 and 20 minutes. And, that hunting even is I was super against hunting, yet I go and buy all this factory farm meat, all of these things that didn't add up. And once I got the new information, I realized, oh, okay, this what I was thinking before was wrong. And I need to update this thinking. I don't know how it is that people are going through life now at 30 years old and haven't had a number of these things where the pattern should be. Most of the things that I'm pretty sure about will at least be updated, if not changed at some point in time. And so when that information comes and it does force them to either, stray from reality and logic or to give up their beliefs, they choose the former because it's just more comfortable. And because I've been through it, and because I've been through the discomfort of realizing everything that I thought was true was maybe not a lie, but was not the foundation that I thought it was. I don't have the sympathy for anybody who's not willing to at least try.
I hear you.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, my philosophy on this is, I think, like, when I was growing up, the person next to me and the person on that, like the person on either side just had this like really easy life. And I view it like, do you have the bumpers on and you're playing bowling? Life is like a game of bowling. And some people, they have no bumpers on, and they're like Michael Phelps and they just shoot down the middle, or they just immediately hit off the side, and their life is like already gone as it happens because they don't achieve anything, and they're just down the side. And some people just get hit on the head all the time by life or psychologically, but that's actually like the cosmos, like looking after them.
Interesting. So we've been going for a little over an hour now. And I think I've got a pretty good idea of what what you're looking to accomplish here. And like I said, it's very noble. If for no other reason than because it's such a big undertaking. And I appreciate you taking my. I hope you didn't take them as criticisms, but my just questions and skepticisms in stride. And I could, based on what we were just talking about, a lot of people could have been like, screw you, I came on here to talk about my book and now you're attacking my life's work and stuff like that. And I'm glad that you didn't see that's not at all what I was doing. And I think again that this is very noble and very needed. So I certainly don't have the answers. So if you have you're going down this road, I definitely support you and would love to see this go as far as it can, because everything that we've been talking about, everything that is lacking and that causes when we're talking about these things that are lacking, the reason it and tell me if you disagree, but I think the main reason that it matters that these things are lacking is not just because, oh, it's fun, it's cool, but because it has tangible effects in making people's lives better or worse. And we want, I say it all the time, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we want to, especially if we can start with kids, the next generation, if we can set them up to be the best they can be, then everything just gets better. And even if it's not the kids, but it's just people in general learning, better late than never, right?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on. This was a really cool conversation, and you definitely gave me a lot to think about. And I'm curious as to how this endeavor of yours is going to play out. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'm definitely here for that. But yeah, I'll give you the floor if there is anything you'd like to plug, the book, social media, any other projects you're working on, anything like that. The floor is yours.
Well, you can check out my books on Amazon. I think I will be redesigning the cover and sort of like making a second edition that's a little more revamped. But yeah, it's on Amazon.com. You just type in, I think if you type in my name, you'll probably find the books that I have. I have a few. And I don't know, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show podcast.
Not a problem. It was a pleasure. And we'll have, your book and anything else. If you forgot, you can let me know. And everything will be linked below. So please go and check out, put this in your classroom. And whether you're a parent or a teacher, if you can definitely inject this stuff directly, even if you're an adult and you just haven't, you didn't get this stuff. It sounds, again, I haven't read the book, but it sounds like this is stuff that can be helpful to anyone. So definitely go check it out. And let's all hope that Rachel is successful in this and making our entire society better, because that's really where I see this ending up. You have a good one.
Have a good one.
Take care. All right. So that was Put This in Your Classroom by Rachel Landez. Very interesting conversation. I said this to her, but I want to reiterate that I really do appreciate her taking what I had to say and my devil's advocate positions and just saying, I didn't think about that before. Taking new information and letting it sit and not feeling the need to get defensive and say, well, this, that, whatever. It was something she hadn't thought about before. And that's why, and that's great. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to foster thinking and growth and success. And so, I hope that she can take this conversation and go back to what she's doing, and it'll help her goal, because her goal is, as I said a number of times, pretty honorable. And taking on the public school system is not something new, but it's something that, you know, everybody knows that the public school system is not great. And she's from England. I'm obviously from America. I don't know the particulars of how different or similar they are, but you know, I haven't heard that in you know, conversations about the American school system that, oh, England is so much better. You know, the same types of ideological not so great things that some people think of the American school system seem to be the same over there. So, I mean, if I'm completely off base, and maybe, you know, the UK system is something completely different, then let me know how what I'm missing there, because I've never been to school in England. Dad, you went to school in England? Mom, if you're watching, there you go. And so that would be an interesting thing to learn about. But you know, it's cool that she is willing to say, I'm working on this. I don't have all the answers. I don't have you know, all the solutions, but I have this goal. And like she was talking about with Michael Phelps, having these changes be implemented as an end goal is a first step in getting there. And you have to, you know, journey of 5,000 miles starts with one step. And again, that does not to belittle her work at all. But changing the school system is a big, and specifically in the way that she wants to, and having it focus on these types of things, that's a big undertaking. And I think while there is a growing segment of the population who is seeing the value of you know, that type of you know, that type of education and you know, following what the kid is interested in, things like that. While I do think it's becoming increasingly focused on, there is also a growing segment of the nation, and again, the West, that doesn't like that. Doesn't like that we're moving into more of this, well, what do you want to do? And you know, they feel like the traditional system is what is most conducive to success, especially if you are not blessed with, and you know, if you know, she was talking about painting. There's a painting right here from a dog training client who, you know, if I could do that, I might, you know, want to take time away from other stuff to focus on that and monetize that and have that be a way to make my living. But I can't do that. And I could learn, but just because I like to draw when I was a kid, it would not have been a good thing for me to stop all schooling in other areas and focus on that. You know, even music, which is something that I did for a while. I was in bands, even with the All Really podcast, the old podcast. We did a rap song. It's still up on the channel. Go check that out if for a laugh. I forget what it's called, but you know, it's go check it out. It's funny. I'll link it somewhere up here. The even being a musician and being in bands, when you are young and you see you know, you go to a concert or you see on MTV, it's like, oh, I want to be a rock star. And then, you know, it comes down to actually practicing and doing this, and you sign up for a show and you have to worry about this and you got to lug all your stuff there, and then you're really nervous. It's not the same as you built it up to be in your head. And especially as a child, you know, having an understanding of what is really involved in a you know, a career path, that's a lot for to put on a kid's shoulders. And so I don't know if necessarily specifically with painting, which, you know, is just the quintessential artist dying broke and penniless, is the painter or the writer. But you know, with writing, where you know, technology has really allowed that to catch up, and that you know, people who are prolific writers are culturally relevant because of podcasts like these, and you know, like the Joe Rogans of the world, and it's not because so many people are reading their books, it's because they're listening to what they're saying. And painters, it doesn't go the same way. So there's definitely, it doesn't matter what you want to do when you're 5 years old. That doesn't necessarily translate into a career path. But that being said, if from that age even we can start instilling how to think differently about things and not just focus so heavily on what we want kids to learn, then it sets them up to be much more successful in all areas of life. And especially now we're seeing in universities where what is being taught is being heavily politically influenced. Whether you agree with the politics or not, we should agree that a university education should not be politicized, and what you're learning should be truth and what is, not what should be. And determining what should be is a product of learning what you should be learning in college. But that's not what's happening. They're just espousing propaganda and just this narrative and that narrative. And we're seeing, indoctrinated adults going out into the world and acting out these beliefs in ways that aren't always great. And so if we can change that, and have people be able to critically think about everything, I don't see the downside. Just do better. I don't know. I'm glad that other people have more empathy for these things than I do, because I definitely don't have patience for it. If you are not somebody who takes ideas and tries to rip them to pieces before you put your name on it and you say, I believe this, then I don't trust you. I don't think you're, sorry, I kind of look down on that. I'm not going to say I look down on you, but I look down on that. That's not good. If you think that you believe something, then try to tear it down. If you really believe it, then just like she was talking about gravity, if you really believe in gravity, then trying to tear down gravity shouldn't be a big deal. You should either come out still believing in gravity, or you can win a Nobel Prize by disproving gravity. And it goes the same for everything else. So I think that's a good place to end it. I appreciate you if you're still here. I know this one wasn't as short as some of the others. They may be getting a little bit longer. I'm trying to keep them, short. I know I can ramble, but thank you for sticking around. Please don't forget to give it a like if you enjoyed it. Comment below what you thought of what I had to say, what you thought of what Rachel is doing. Are you going to buy the book? Does it seem like this is something worthwhile? Is she wasting her time? Is there something that you can do to help what she is trying to accomplish? Let me know down below. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. As always, I will have some clips out for you this week, and then I will see you again for another episode next Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. This is the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am Lutch, your host, signing off. Later.